There are always winners and losers from tariffs, and I think we shouldn't pretend there aren't going to be any winners. But I think that it's very easy to completely disparage tariffs, and I do. I think the ultimate act of economic self-harm. But what should give us pause is the fact that they remain very, very popular amongst a great many Americans. And we see the same, if you look at there's opinion polls done in the EU, there's big support for retaliatory tariffs. If you look in the UK, you will also find support for tariffs too. So this isn't something from which Britain and Europe is completely immune. The idea that globalization is going too fast is widespread. Marine Le Pen has been saying so for a long, long time in France. She says she feels completely vindicated now. Globalization is a pejorative term, right? By world free trade, we mean your ability to, as a consumer, to go off and buy for the best prices. So if you've bought a TV that wasn't made in Britain, if you've eaten prawns that weren't made in Britain, then you're benefiting from globalization. I'm not quite sure how that can be dead. What I think people refer to is the idea that greater free trade with the world improves us and it improves the countries that we buy from. I guess that is, I would argue, straight economics. Some would argue theory. But when people say globalization is dead, I think what they mean is that it's time to ditch the idea that either Britain or the countries we deal with are being helped by this, and time to put up things like Trump-style tariffs or regulations. So it's a very worrying turn of events when we see this echoed not just in Washington, but in London as well. To me, it's not a question of globalization being dead or alive. It's about managing it properly. And Brexit was basically a vote for managing it better, to dial it back, if you like. A lot of people thought it had gone too far, and I would agree with that. Whether you think it had gone too far or not depends on where you were, basically on the economic spectrum. So if you were somebody who wants to hire plumbers, nannies, barmen, etc., then it was great to have the world's labour at your doorstep. But if you're competing with these people for employment, then it all seemed a little bit less fair. So what Brexit was basically an instruction to all political parties, all of whom opposed Brexit pretty much, apart from Reform, that it was time to basically to dial it back, to have proper immigration control and run a more economically cohesive model. Now, I can absolutely see echoes of that in the debate now over tariffs. I mean, of course, America's got complete control over its borders. Every country does that's not in the EU. But so if they think that the world economy is developing in a way that benefits the richest but doesn't seem to benefit those at the other end of the spectrum, and a new model is required, they can't do Brexit. I mean, they did in kind of well, the American Revolution, of course, was the ultimate Brexit. But the only thing they can do is go for tariffs, and we can see that. And by the way, I even heard the same argument in the Scottish referendum campaign. When you were looking at people who were voting to leave the union, they usually were saying that the current system, they called it the UK, isn't working out well for me, my community. So you can see this system, and you have it worldwide, that the economic model is working in a way that disadvantages me and my community, and it seems to advantage the richest. So fundamentally, I think this is about managing inequality better, managing the economy better, trying to give more people a stake in the economy. Now, Brexit was Britain's democratic purge, if you like, trying to correct that model, and perhaps tariffs is going to be America's, but I suspect it won't end very well. Tariff is a tax, that's all it is. It's a tax on imports, a massive tax on imports. If Americans are going to have to buy the trainers they make in America, then those Nikes are going to end up costing $200 a pair. I can't see that being very popular. So you're completely right that what they will gain in tax revenue will be dwarfed by what consumers are going to pay extra in prices. And that's why, by some calculations, this is the biggest tax rise that America has seen since the early 1980s. But then again, this will the pain is dispersed amongst all consumers, but there will be benefits, and they will accrue to, for example, car makers, people who work in car factories. They're going to be better paid. There's going to be more of them. When Trump put his washing machine tariffs back last time he was in office, you could see that there were something like 5,000 extra jobs created in that sector. Now, when you look back on it, the actual cost was like, more than $100,000 per job. So that was a very inefficient way of helping people. So there are always winners and losers from tariffs, and I think we shouldn't pretend there aren't going to be any winners. But I think that it's very easy to completely disparage tariffs, and I do. I think the ultimate act of economic self-harm. But what should give us pause is the fact that they remain very, very popular amongst a great many Americans. And we see the same, if you look at there's opinion polls done in the EU, there's big support for retaliatory tariffs. If you look in the UK, you will also find support for tariffs too. So it's, this isn't something from which Britain and Europe is completely immune. The idea that globalization is going too fast is widespread. Marine Le Pen has been saying so for a long, long time in France. She says she feels completely vindicated now. And I suspect and there will be a big now, I think, a debate in the Labour Party between those who think, well, tariffs actually are a tax on importers, so let's see if we can do this and protect our workers. And those who will saying, no,
Well,
we can't add, make it the cost of living any higher. I think we were very quick to forget just how popular Jeremy Corbyn was, just how close he came to victory in the 2017 election. I mean, Corbynism has been vanquished from Keir Starmer's Labour Party, and everything that he's done has done that. But has he vanquished support for those kind of left populist policies, for the kind of high tax, high tariff? I don't think he has. And
mm,
remember now that reform is almost positioning itself as, one way to the right of the Tories, but another way to the left of Labour. Reform is second to the Labour Party in a lot of constituencies. And it wouldn't surprise me if there is some pressure in Labour to say, okay, let's look at the sort of people who back Trump's tariffs. A lot of them are our core voters. So should we have a similar message for them? So I think we're at a
mm,
very, very delicate stage here. Well, this is the puzzle. I mean, the Sunday Times story this morning that quotes a Downing Street spokesman saying that Keir Starmer believes or will say tomorrow one of those two things, that globalization is over. Now, that's such a strange thing to say. That's exactly what Marine Le Pen would say. That's exactly what Donald Trump would say. So that's very puzzling. And also, as you say, it's in direct contradiction to what the business leaders were telling him. So it could well be that he wants to use some kind of Trumpian language. He wants to use anti-globalization language. And also, by the way, saying that all options remain on the table. So he isn't ruling out retaliation either. And I know that Jonathan Reynolds, for example, is a little bit concerned that there's going to be cheap Asian imports coming into the UK and they may threaten British jobs. The IPPR think tank has done some work on a number of jobs which it thinks might be affected if we end up, for example, having lots of 20 grand Chinese BYD electric cars and MG4s and all the rest of it. So that will be a bit of a dilemma down the line. I really hate this language of dumping. I mean, right now, families are really struggling to afford a car. So if they're able to come up with a BYD Dolphin for like 16 grand, 20 grand, this is exactly what Ed Miliband needs to get his 2030 target. We were told 10 years ago the EVs would be coming down in price to this kind of level. That hasn't happened. So there could be side effects of this, good side effects for Britain. Right now, inflation's a problem, it's on the rise again. So if Keir Starmer gets a chance to offset this by by having things that are turned back from the drawbridge of America when it's hoisted, if they come to Britain, high quality price goods, then our British people, our consumers, have got the right to buy that surely without the government getting in the way. So I think this could be a plus if Keir Starmer has got the courage to take it. So, Aisha, you sound quite optimistic that he is going to go down the right path. I think it's 50-50 because I do think that we see a kind of very toxic populist message here that is very big and potent in America, is big and potent in France, is big and potent in Germany. That isn't particularly potent in Britain at the moment, but there will always be a temptation to lean into those kind of protectionist little England drawbridge up Michael Gove's jihad against what he called the chlorinated chicken from America that he didn't want. So we still see these kind of attitudes prevailing. I just hope they don't prevail in this government.